There we go. I think we are up and running. Thank you. For those of you that have joined us online, welcome. This is a virtual session as part of a larger in-person event here in Edinburgh today, an implementation focused event by HeatSource. This particular session, we will hear from two speakers who represent regional green heat projects or organisations. So in order to be inclusive in a pan-Scotland approach, as HeatSource is a pan-Scotland project, we were keen to hear from people who may not have been able to make it here on the day, but also give the opportunity for others to join the webinar part virtually. Excuse me. Apologies for this. Okay, new lesson, do not do a webinar during an event. Okay, there we go. So yes, we have two speakers today. First up, we've got Scott Fairbairn from ThermaFY Eco, based in the Borders, and then we have Bryan Dods from Caithness Voluntary Group, who is able to share some really, really exciting projects with us. So just for those in the room, apologies, you've heard this before, but for those online, HeatSource is a pan-Scotland project delivered by myself. My name is Emma Church. I'm Impact Manager at Built Environment Smarter Transformation. And HeatSource is all about trying to understand some of the challenges for capacity building and competitiveness building within the green heat supply chain in Scotland. And we can conduct one-to-ones and engage with the sector to really understand what some of those wealth and job creation opportunities are, and how we can direct those companies with that potential to the enterprise agencies to seek out further support. We're all aware that the heat and building strategy signposts heat pumps and heat networks as the kind of low and no regrets technologies that will be implemented in order to support the transition to a zero or low carbon heating system in Scotland. But there's a range of complementary technologies and opportunities for new businesses to be created, and also for existing businesses to diversify their products or services in order to take advantage of those opportunities. There's a few ways that you can connect with us. So we have good social media, and we have newsletters. We love to share case studies and examples of best practice, and also give opportunities for organisations to share what it is that they're doing in the sector as part of the day. Just to make you aware that we do have there's an upcoming webinar from Scottish Enterprise on the Can Do Innovation Fund on Thursday afternoon this week. So a bit of a chance to do a bit of Q&A on that and understand what additional support there is for technology and innovation in the sector. So our next speaker is Scott Fairbairn, like I say, from ThermaFY Eco, talking a little bit more about the consumer journey and its role in the successful implementation of projects. So if you bear with me 1 second, we'll be able to switch over to alternative presenter. She says hopefully.
Scott, if it's okay, it'd be better if you could share your screen.
Yep, can do. Can you see that?
Yes, we can see your slide, Scott.
Anyone else? Okay, you want me to start?
Just one sec, Scott, we can see presenter view, so we can see the notes as opposed to the full view.
Scott, if you just swap display at the top of your screen. That's it.
Fantastic.
Perfect. Okay. You never think I'd work for a technology company, but hey. You want me to start?
Yes, please, Scott.
Cool. Okay, hello everyone. Sorry for the delay. I was asked to come along to share my views on successful implementation of green projects from our own experience and a little about what we do. So let's start off with some context around that and the challenge that we are facing in the UK. The UK has the poorest insulated homes in Europe. Roughly 20% of the carbon that is burned in the UK at the moment comes from heating of homes. We track efficiency with EPCs, which is a bit of a blunt tool, but it's what the government has at the moment. They are rated between A and G, and around half of homes in the UK at the moment are below C. There is about 25 million homes who continue to use gas boilers and need to be transitioned into something different over the coming years. And air source heat pumps, for example, we have only installed thousands in the last few years, compared with probably 2 million new gas boiler, combi boilers that are being installed annually. So there is that challenge. So what is the government doing with that challenge? So their challenge is to get to net zero by 2050. There is a lot of stopping and starting of grants, which has slowed down the process of making implementation happen. And examples of differences between different countries. So an air source heat pump at the moment, you can get a grant of £7,500 if you're north of the border like we are in Scotland, but it's only £5,000 if you are in England and Wales. All of the utility companies run eco projects. Again, we are now at Eco 4 and Eco Plus, and the challenges that these programs are having to get people to undertake the changes required and the implementation is a real challenge for them. The funding is available, but the criteria to actually qualify for your house is quite challenging. And simple things as well, like gas is still cheaper than electricity. So why would you move away from gas? All of this leads to confusion, and confusion, I think, in the marketplace then makes people think, I probably won't do something just now, or they'll probably make the wrong decision. So what we found in our company and the surveys that we do is that it's not just about the property, it's about the people that are in the property. So you can have a row of 10 houses in the street, and those properties are all exactly the same, built exactly the same, but they've got 10 different types of people in them. You'll have people who perhaps have just moved into the house, they want to do a lot with it, and this is a great time to do implementation of green projects. You will have someone who has perhaps got a young family and planning on sort of moving to a bigger place in the next 2 or 3 years. So again, they would be restricted to what they want to do because of the budget they've got. You get someone else who perhaps this is their forever home and they're keen to do lots to the home because they see themselves spending the next 20 or 30 years there. So it's not just about the property, but it's about the people who live in there, and they've got to be taken into account as well. And these people are confused, and they're all having people tell them that down the pub or wherever that air source heat pumps won't heat our house is warm enough in the winter. I'll need to change all my radiators. I'll need to change all my pipes. What about hydrogen? Is hydrogen coming? Is it not coming? What's the difference between blue and green? Am I going to have to change my boiler? Am I going to have to change my my gas fire? What about my cooker, etc., etc.? Insulation, does that cause mold in my house? I'm concerned about that. It all seems very expensive. What's the big payback period? And there is big payback periods in a lot of these green initiatives. It takes time, and what is the right time to do this? There is going to be work needed done to your house. There's going to be it's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be a period of change, and that all slows people down in what they do. So what do we do to help with this confusion, and what do we do to try and help people on this journey? So we're a software development company based in Kelso. So we have developed thermal imagery software and analysis, which can be attached to a mobile phone, which goes around your home and checks for that your heating is okay, and that you haven't got drafts and gaps in your home. This is what we started off with, but we then realized that people were confused by a number of things that they'd heard. So we now focus on probably 3 things when we go to people's homes. We listen to the problems that they have. Everyone's got this bedroom at the back that's colder than everywhere else, or this extension that doesn't quite warm up more than the rest of the house. But we also listen to what they want to do. Do they want to do something with solar panels? Do they want to do something with insulation? Do they want to do something with air source heat pumps? And we take those into account. We also let them know about little sort of products that they may not be aware of that would help them. There is, for example, you can get heaters that sort of blow out. If you've got your furniture against your radiator, then you can get little fans that blast that out and gives you more heat from your radiators in your lounge and other rooms. There is connected air bricks, for example, under your house, which is now linked to your Wi-Fi, which open and close and allow drafts to be stopped and air to be allowed through your property at the appropriate time. So there's a lot of products there that we can allow, tell you about and advise you about. So we have about 100 well, we've got exactly 125 advisors across the country. They come out and they visit your home. They spend on average about an hour with you, understanding where you are on your journey, the things that you're confused about, if you are confused, the things that you want to do around your home and your plans for the future. We work with some of the UK's biggest companies, with their employees and with their customers, to facilitate that change and the change to everyone's house. So as I said, there is a customer app where we will make once we visited your house, we will make a series of recommendations. Those drop into a customer app. If you want a web-based version of your report and your recommendations, you can have that. And we also send a PDF paper version for those people who would prefer it on that source. So for each of the recommendations that we make in someone's house, we do 3 things. We offer suppliers who can do that work for you. We let you know about banks and building societies who have green loans and mortgages who can facilitate any borrowing that you need to make these changes. And we let you know about grants and funding in the area, such as the one that I mentioned on HeatSource heat pump, which are available currently, which you can take advantage of. So our plan there is to keep you going on your journey. So you committed to a survey from ourselves. We've listened to you about what you want to do in your house, and then we've converted that into recommendations, which you can then take forward. We want to continue you with that journey, which says, here's some people who can do this work for you. Here's some lending if you need it with banks that will do that, and here's some grants from central government, devolved government, that will help you in that process. This is just a longer version of our customer journey. I won't dwell on that. I appreciate we're kind of late at starting. So, but we do, yeah, you can sign up for one of our surveys. We then spend an hour in your home. You then get the recommendations coming through on our ThermaFY home app. That app includes sort of hints and tips of things that you want to do, turning down your washing machine to a lower setting, trying to avoid using your tumble dryer, etc., etc. It also makes you aware of community forums where like-minded people or people who have done something like solar panels in the past. You can talk to people about the experience and how well it is, but also actions to be taken forward. And all this then drives you and your house towards your net zero targets. So the challenge for potential home improvements, as I mentioned at the start, is some of it can be very expensive. So I've included some examples there of some of the bigger ticket items and the potential savings made in a year. So you've really got to be committed to some of these spends to change your house, because the payback period is over a longer period of time. But there are simple things that you can do as well. You can move to more energy efficient light bulbs. You can get draft extruders to put under your doors, etc. So there is something for everyone, and everyone can take a few steps in their journey towards net zero. So money shouldn't stop you, that everyone can do something. I mentioned before some of the little products that people may not be aware of. Again, they are easier spend, these are cheaper spend, but everything makes a difference. You know, the valve on your radiator, if you can have that to be a more sort of automated one, but there's lots out there that can give you control of each of your homes. I mentioned the little sort of fan there that you can put under or behind your sofa if it's right next to the radiator, and the air bricks that are controlled by Wi-Fi. These are all simple examples from a list of 50 to 100 of things that you can do that is not much of a spend. And all of these should take you on your journey to net zero. So again, just to summarize, I think the implementation side of things, you've got to take the people with you. It's not just about the property. I think a lot of focus is on the property and what we need to do to properties, but it's taking people on that journey as well. And there's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of stopping and starting of grants and funding that that stops people in their tracks when they're thinking about doing things. Some of these spends are significant capital spends, and from that point of view, people then need to be comfortable that what they're doing is at the right time with the right people and the right product. So there's a lot to think about. Okay, I'll shut up now, and if there is any questions, then I'd be delighted to take them. Thank you. I've got no idea how to get my screen back into something else now. Central guys.
No, that's fine. Thank you so much, Scott. That was really, really insightful. Apologies in the room for the audio quality. It is an entire building issue, and so it's currently coming through the projector, hence why it's not ideal. So I do apologise. Does anybody have any questions for Scott on app, with products, or the importance of consumers? Joan? So the question, Scott, is about monetising that kind of hour. How do you justify that kind of time spent with the consumer? How is that paid for?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So I think we do that easily with the sort of quick wins that we carry out when we are doing the survey. And the number of people who their boiler is cranked up to the max and it's not condensing, the number of people whose radiators are cranked up to the max, they're using their washing machine at full belt, they use a tumble dryer all the time, etc. So by sitting down with them and explaining some of the things that they can save money on, we can easily save that hour's worth of spend out in the house. So one of our aspirations very much is that we just give them that bit that says, you know, here are things that you need to do that will definitely save you money today, as well as the longer term conversation.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Like, say that behaviour piece is just as important as putting new technology in. You know, reducing consumption as a starting point. Really clear. I'm sorry that we don't have more time for some questions, but I think we move on to have Bryan speak, and then if we've got a little bit of time at the end, we can maybe have a couple more questions. But thank you so much for your time today, Scott. Thank you.
No problem.
Hi, Bryan. Bryan, are you able to share your presentation, or Danielle, would you like me to?
Bryan, you're still muted. If you cover over your face. That's...
Tried sharing screen there and it doesn't seem to have done anything.
Yep, we can see your screen, Bryan. So if you just start it from beginning, we should be able to see it.
Right, okay, you're seeing some...
So if you click on from beginning on this side, we should be able to see your full presentation.
On one screen I've got the start, and on the other screen I've got the...
Okay, so what I'm going to do, like we did the other day, if when this comes up this time asking you to share your screen, just click on the little arrow that allows you to pick what screen you would like to share.
Screen of main monitor 1. Is that making any difference now?
And then just from presenter mode, so in from beginning.
Can you try that again, and I'll click on a different one. It seems to... Apologies for this.
I think that's us now.
As far as stepping on through the things concerned, I just...
That's perfect, Bryan.
Right, okay.
That's great. So we've got the image of the report. You're good to go, Bryan.
Right, so if I click on that, is that stepping forward through it? Yeah, I can't see it.
So Brian, is there an arrow down the left-hand side of your screen? If you hover over that where the presentation is, it should allow you to bring it forward or backwards.
I can't see an arrow on the side of the screen. Tell you what, can you just go to you run the screen then? Yeah, I'll drop out of doing what I'm doing, and then basically we'll just run it that way. Here all day if we, my apologies. Technology, you know. Okay. Right, ready to go on that then?
Danielle, can you see that as part of the webinar?
You can see the presentation, just not in presenter mode. You can see the slides down the side. Emma, I would try unplugging from the screen, the main screen, bringing it up and then put it back in. We can see the presentation now. Yep, we can see that now.
Right, good morning everybody, or just about, yeah, it's just still good morning, just to know more. Thank you very much to HeatSource for inviting me to come and make a presentation. It's a great pleasure. Harris Gilmore, who's the manager of the Caithness plant, sends his apologies. He's actually sunning himself on a beach in Tenerife as we speak at the moment. He's got his summer shutdown coming up shortly, so at the end of the day, he's grabbing his holidays when he can. But he gave me the presentation and he's checked over what I'm likely to say, so he's happy enough with what's actually going on. Basically, here we are. Introducing myself, just bear in mind the fact I'm very much a generalist. I'm not an expert in the technicalities of this stuff. I have an interest in energy, and I live in the area. I've lived here for 30 odd years, and I'm keen to actually make things happen. Whiskey and Warmly, there's two sort of strands to this. The first one is an existing thing. The second string is something which exists in my imagination, or our imagination at this point in time. But it will become reality. I'll explain more as we go along. Can we have the next slide, please? Yeah. So if I start speaking and you can just reveal the bits, I'll do a bit of context here. And apologies if I'm being a bit patronising to my Scottish colleagues in this business. We still, after all these years, find that people are not altogether sure where Caithness actually is. The northernmost mainland area in the UK, I've been in contact with people who have said, oh yeah, I was up your way just the other day there. Oh yeah, where was that? That was Perth. Yeah, okay, fine. It's 5.5 hours drive from Edinburgh, Glasgow and Aberdeen, 2.5 hours drive to Inverness. We are fairly remote, a remote rural area. Population total of about 25,000, 9,000 in Wick, 8,000 Thurso, and the rest are sort of dotted around about in various different villages and hamlets. There is a great rivalry, as you often get in areas like that, where there's no many other diversions between Wick and Thurso. I'll tell you a wee bit more about that as we go along. We do suffer from high prices, including for energy and for transport. We do suffer relatively low wages and relatively high levels of benefit claims. We do have some serious health issues, which is becoming very apparent lately, and we do have some seriously poor housing stock. But I will emphasise that we're not whining and complaining about this. We're not as badly off as some areas in Scotland. We do have some fairly substantial employers in the area. For context, again, the winter weather is cold and damp. We don't surprisingly get a lot of snow. It tends to blow right over the top of us because the area is flat. The winters tend to be very long and very miserable. The summers tend to be fairly short, but usually spectacular. This last few days has been a perfect example of that. We have a heavy wind farm presence. I think we've got more turbines per head of population than anywhere else in Europe, but that's just my own judgment call. Both on and offshore, farming, fishing and seafood are still stable employers around about the place, and we also have the nuclear decommissioning plants at Dounreay and at the naval base at Vulcan, and we also have a fairly substantial tourist quotient going on as well, the North Coast 500, which on the one hand I would heartily recommend is a wonderful thing to go. On the other hand, geez a break, no too many people at the same time, please. Move on to the next slide, please. The Wick Ignis plant, it's a biomass steam and heating plant. It's been operating by Wick Ignis as Wick Ignis since 2012. Before that, it was owned by the Highland Council. It was built by the Highland Council originally. At the moment, we've got 220 homes supplied with heating and hot water. We also supply heating and hot water to Caithness General and to a load of council buildings and some sheltered housing. Moving on from that, we also supply the steam for process at the old Pulteney Whisky Distillery. We also, off the back of what we do with the steam generation, supply renewable energy to the grid, and everything that's burned in the plant is locally sourced from Scottish Woodlands and Forestry and Land Scotland. We also work very closely with the council and with the Housing Association to tackle fuel poverty within the Wick area. Ignis Wick has 3 full-time staff, 2 part-time staff. It's a fairly substantial operation, but not employment heavy. A wee timeline here. Now, this is an interesting part of the thing. In 2002, the council initiated an innovative heating project in Wick. The key word there being innovative, to support renewable energy commitment and to tackle fuel poverty. Both laudable sort of aims. This chap, Caithness Heating and Power Project, was approved in 2004 with an arm's length company formed to deliver it. By 2008, financial and technical difficulties became very apparent and the project failed. 2008 to 2012, the facility was burning oil at over £1 million a year to actually service the contracts that it had between the distillery and the people heating. Now, I'll stop the presentation at that point there. Innovative heating project. Chap project approved, financial technical difficulties apparent. It was an object lesson in picking an innovative technology which manifestly did not work. I'm told, now it's really quite hard to put your finger on much in the way of details of this because everybody that was associated with it wants no association with it at all because it ended up being such an embarrassment for all concerned. But the bottom line appears to be that the technology that was selected for it worked in theory very well. It worked in a lab environment in miniature very well. Somebody in their wisdom made the judgment call that the jump from lab experiment to full-scale deployment would be a simple process. And the simple fact of the matter was that moving it to scale did not work. It took them 4 years to actually finally admit. Now, during the process, there was quite a lot of people locally, not myself, but there was quite a lot of people locally who were wise in the ways of aspects of this. There's an awful lot of engineers per head of population in this area as well. And the council were repeatedly told, this isn't going to work in the early days. Oh, yes, it's going to work. What do you know? This isn't going to work. Oh, yes, it'll work. Oh, no, it's not going to work. It isn't going to work. And it ended up as a ding-dong battle between the do's and the don'ts on social media. And I mention this because it's an object lesson when people are doing projects of this type. It was nasty. It really, really got quite heated, very personal. It was extremely nasty to observe. This is the Wick side. I live on the Thurso side, so us in Thurso were kind of looking, smiling wryly to ourselves and saying, that poor Wickers, look at what the state they've got themselves into with this. But there's a word of warning. Innovative heating project. So if we move on, 2012, Ignis took over the plant. They installed a new biomass boiler and just basically quietly got on with it. 2014, they put a backup biomass boiler in. And then in 2015, the contract was let to actually join the General Hospital up to it. That, of course, in order to supply heat to that, you've got to have a good degree of reliability involved, which they've obviously got going. And they also got steam turbine 1 connected to the grid, and they're churning out renewable energy off the back of that. Over 16 and 17, investment was made. A new wood pellet heating plant and steam turbine 2 were installed. 2022, it was shortlisted for the best onshore renewable project in the Highlands and Islands. Okay, so the big thing is it works now and it works well. It is reliable, it gives no problems, it basically chunders away and it supplies its heat, its hot water and its steam. It supplies its electricity without any kind of grief. An interesting point is, when I got involved with this business and I spoke to 4 or 5 different people, I was up having a look at the Caithness plant. That's amazing. Oh, that was a disaster, that was. That was a total disaster. Oh, God, what an embarrassment, total disaster. The only thing that people remember was the fact that it was a disaster and the social media fallout that came off the back of the business, even now after 15 years of it actually operating properly, or 10 years of operating properly. So there's a wee word of warning in amongst that bit. As it stands at the moment, we're in the process of adding additional houses into the network. There is expansion, further expansion planned. So we move on to the next slide, please. As we mentioned, there's 220 at the moment, council houses, housing association and private tenants, people on it. Because it works well and its reputation spreading, people are clamouring under the current energy poverty situation to get on board. The Wick Assembly Rooms is connected, the General Hospital, as I mentioned, is connected, the Medical Centre is connected, Caberfaith Court, which is a care facility, is connected. The old Pulteney Distillery, it was actually one of the prime movers for the thing in the first place for processed steam, the justification for having it, is connected and has been since the very start. It supplies a constant 85 degrees, 24/7, 365 days of the year. And through 10.5 kilometres of underground pipework, it sits keeping people's houses toasty. And it seems to be a popular choice. Oh, and by the way, 300 megawatts of electricity per year, which is not to be snorted at. That goes back into the money that's generated off the back of that, goes into the pot and basically offsets the cost of generating the heat in the first instance. So there we are. If we move on to the next one, Old Pulteney. If you haven't tried Old Pulteney, I can heartily recommend it. It's a very nice malt. Basically, the heating station was built directly next to the distillery because steam requirement for the distillery was seen as being key to justifying why the thing existed in the first place. And at that stage, the steam was the prime mover. The actual heat and hot water was a secondary consideration. The distillery gets steam at 8 bar, 175 degrees, and then it gets dropped to 4 bar for the actual process to heat the mash tuns and the stills. And it returns back to the heating station at 90 degrees, where it gets heated up again and fired back out. It runs 24, the distillery runs 24 hours a day, 5 days a week with a summer shutdown. The 5 days a week thing is an issue because at the end of the day, the actual steam generation is a significant effort for the plant. And basically it isn't consistent, it's not constant. That 5 days a week means there are 2 days a week that it's not running. They also have their own oil boiler. They would soak 4,500 litres per day if they were running on oil without the thing. It's 50-50 with the district heat at the moment. And with the expansion that's planned, I'll talk about a bit further on, the chances are it's going to be substantially less than 50-50 in the not too distant future. The district heating offers a stable base load for the biomass boiler, but the bottom line is that the steam generation requires a degree of complexity and a degree of expense, which is, it's there, it's part of the thing, but at the end of the day, if you were building one from scratch, you wouldn't really want to get steam involved in the business. You probably want to do that as a separate sort of entity. And just as a point to note, when they go offline in the summer, that's the distillery goes offline in the summer, the district heating system, the main biomass boiler shuts down. They can actually run on backup too. The whole heating system for the summer runs on the backup pellet boiler system, which is the number 2. As I said, Old Pulteney, it's good stuff. Now, you can see a picture there of the pipes getting laid. There was a certain degree of upheaval that was involved in through the town, and the people of Wick were actually quite enamoured with the idea that this was happening because it was seen as something they could be proud of, which made it all the more embarrassing and all the more shameful, the fact that it didn't work. But nowadays, people are actually on side. They can reveal the various bits of text now. Further developments that happen, there's another 120 odd houses in the next 6 months going to be connected. That's council houses plus private households that are mixed in amongst that lot who are desperate to get on board with this business. We're looking at connecting the Pulteney People's Centre, Community Centre, the youth club, the police and the train stations, the high school and leisure centres on the cards. Basically, there's an upgrade required to cope with the expanded coverage. The high school and leisure centre is going to be a big thing. That's going to be a big expansion, the East Caithness campus. and that's going to require additional capacity. But the plan at the moment is to get rid of their redundant oil backup system and replace it with a substantial ground source heat pump to cover the summer operations. So they shouldn't need to use any kind of biomass at all during the summer if they can actually get that installed properly. There'll be big lumps of machinery, but they'll do the job quite nicely. Okay, step on, please. As far as pricing is concerned, and that there is a picture of the actual heat exchanger unit, which is fitted into people's houses. If you basically imagine that goes where your boiler would go. Basically, there's hot water comes in from the system, goes through the heat exchanger and heats the hot water and radiator heater water in the house, and then just rumbles back out again and goes on to the next house. The pricing right from the word go was set up to tackle fuel poverty in Wick. It's the average price that customers are paying for an average house is £550 a year for all your heating and hot water. That's as opposed to an average of around about £3,000 a year for heating and hot water, which is what the average house pays when they're using electric or oil. Yep. They have annual price reviews. There's no standing charge. It's all set up very, very well in very much in the customer's domain. An interesting fact, until very, very recently, it was run by a venture capital company called Equitix. They were the owners, not the runners. And Equitix, for all that they were a venture capital company, never, ever tried to rook the system at all. They didn't ever try and bump the prices up to take the eyes out of it. They basically were quite happy if it was paying for itself with a wee bit of profit going in that they could reinvest elsewhere. I'll tell you a bit more about what's been going on recently. And then from an environmental perspective, there is an indication. If we were the middle indication on the graph there is equivalent heat from oil, the amount of CO2 that's pumped out. On the right hand side, the heat from natural gas, the amount of CO2. And looky, Wick wood burning plant. It's a way, 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 way down, saving 3,941 tonnes approximately of CO2 compared to oil. All the wood that's used in the plant is sourced within 100 miles of plant. If that's one thing, we've got a few things up here that are useful. We've got lots of wind, we've got a fair amount of water, and we've certainly got plenty of wood. There's plenty of crop timber forest lying around about the place. And the wood is naturally dried, so there's no major effort involved and there's no major energy effort involved in actually preparing it. And another thing, the farmers kind of argue and fight with each other to get the ash. They take shots each at who gets the ash that comes out of the thing, and it all gets put back on the land because it is really, really good for the ground. So here we are, environmentally really rather friendly. Just to talk a little bit about the wood, that's a picture of Borrowstone Quarry, which is slightly to the south of Wick. Scottish Woodlands harvest the wood that gets hauled in, dropped off. The employees basically they're up there basically stacking the logs. The logs are stacked in order and they're dried off for a few months, depending on how wet they are in the first place. And then they get chipped, and then the tractor in the middle hauls the load of chips down to the plant, and it basically gets emptied in, and it basically gets further dried inside the storage silos, and then it gets soaked in and burnt in the biomass. There we are, and that's it. So there's your wood timeline. Let's step on to the next one. Now, the whole thing about how I got involved in this was I went up when I first started the job with Caithness Voluntary Group. Somebody said, here, you want to go and have a look at that Wick heating plant? It's great. So I went up and I was most impressed, and me and Harris got on like a house on fire, or like a biomass boiler on fire, got on great guns. And one of the things that was pointed out when we were looking at the plant was that the second backup pellet boiler system is a modular system. And I said, oh, that kind of looks a bit different. It's just a kind of modular system in a great big box that's been plonked down. I think a skid mounted affair. And he says, yeah, that was the council originally bought that for Ormley. And I thought, I never heard anything about Ormley getting anything like that. Anyway, nothing more was said until me and Harris and another boy were out having a dram one night. I have to say it wasn't Old Pulteney we were sooking at. It was, I think it was grouse, but whatever it was, we were sitting in the pub actually having a gas. And the subject came back up again. And we just kicked the idea around about the places to say that, you've got Wick with the district heating stuff. And in Thurso, you've got a similar sort of area called Ormley, which basically 1960s, 70s housing estates. There's three sort of main areas: High Ormley, Moorside, Alban Court. And it is an area with multiple deprivations, SIM D1. It's off the gas grid. Most of the council houses have got electric storage heating in them. People are paying fortunes for it. There are other areas around about the place, private and sort of mixed equity estates. And then there's some substantial buildings right on the doorstep. There's the Dunbar Hospital, the university campus, the high school, industrial units, daycare centre and various other things as well. And there is a significant interest in net zero activities in Thurso as pushed by the North Highland, or the Highland Climate Hub as it is now, which basically started off in the Thurso area. There are opportunities. We understand there are grants available. So we sat, we got kind of foo, and we says, here, we can do some of this. So we basically took it a step forward, and of course, Ormley became Warmly. And then we ended up with a logo. So we actually ended up with a name and a logo before we had more than a sort of vague idea of what it was we were trying to achieve off the business. So there we were. There was Warmly. And the other thing that dawned on us when I went to the actual community itself, the Ormley Community Association said, look, can we do this? There was a dawning that nobody was going to do it for us. That, you know, the council's got its LHE strategy. It's no one. It's got issues down. Well, it's got plans for running district heating systems in Inverness and Fort William, but nobody was doing anything about anything up with us. So basically, we said, tell you what, let's just do it ourselves. So we're looking at this. It's not a very great map, but you get a picture. It's on the sort of western edge of Thurso. High Ormley is the area that's mainly in red there, which is mostly direct electric heating. The areas surrounding it, Lower Ormley and Moorside Henderson Street, are areas in orange directly impinging on it. And then there's another area down to the south, which is the Primrose Avenue area. And then you can see that there's the Dunbar Hospital, the college and the high school, which are all very, very close to what's going on. If you actually look at what the WIC system has, this is actually a far more compact area. It's a much more compact area. The other aspect of it is if we were actually to build a system in Ormley, we wouldn't be looking to actually generate steam. It would generally just be a big central heating system with hot water. And if you actually look across to the right-hand side of that picture, there's an area of Mount Vernon, which is like Ormley, off the gas grid. And as soon as we started talking about Warmly, here's a good idea. The folk in Mount Vernon were saying, well, what about us? So there's a river in the way, but there may be possibilities of something that we could do as far as extending the Warmly concept to the north into the Doonray estate, the actual Doonray housing estate, and potentially across to the right-hand side. So early days, anything's in the, it's all in the melting pot. We can do lots of different bits and pieces. But anyway, there's over 200 homes directly involved in the first areas we're talking about. Other areas are interested. Once the project is running, we would look to use the experience gained to actually promote this to other communities, because in my view, every sort of community of half a dozen homes or more could actually be gaining from district heating systems of one form or the other, based on what I know at the moment. And on top of that, there are a number of opportunities that come on board by building local expertise for doing this, where local companies can get their guys trained up to actually do the installation work, and opportunities arise elsewhere. And also we've got the possibility of the people who are actually running the system locally, as well as the people who are installing the central heating and so on that go with it. It's all good employment prospects. So step on one, please. Oh, have we jammed up? No, here we are, that's us. So anyway, just to sort of bring a bit more about Ormley together, we have the experience of the Caithness Heat and Power experience and its lasting legacy. Like when I was speaking to people in Wick, in Thurso, you say, we're talking about putting a district heating system in Ormley, and before you've even finished introducing the subject, people go, oh, that'd be like that thing in Wick. The one was a disaster. Oh, God, no, we don't want to have any of that sort of stuff about the place. It just illustrates what you're actually up against. 15 years after the event, it still has that lasting legacy. However, the Wick Ignis plant, as it is at the moment, is a success story. It is working, it is popular. The existing infrastructure is in place. Which means that if you know, we have a place where wood chip can be sourced from, they're used to doing it. We have a company which is already operating in the area who would be more than happy to expand their operation to the other side of the county, I'm sure. We have Ormley Community Association, which is a fairly long-standing body which has been quite very supportive of this. They are looking to be main drivers of it. So we basically set up a community group to pursue the possibilities. Well, one of the things we said right at the beginning was, right, we'll set like a little community group up, a little constituted body up, but we ain't going to burst our guts. What we're going to do is we're going to do this gently and take it easy. Don't publicize it until we've actually got someone to publicize. We'll basically take it one step at a time. We are working in association with the Thurso Drive to Net Zero, which is part of the Community Development Trust's drive. We've engaged with the Highland Council's LHEAS programme. The social housing owners, mainly the council, the North Highlands, NHS Highland, the Education Department and the UHI are all very supportive of it. They all want to get on board because if it works the way that the Wick one does, they'll be looking at dropping their, possibly dropping their heating bills for their buildings by about 75%. I've highlighted in yellow there, the CARES programme is where we're looking to. The Community Heat Development Programme is the main source of advice and help that we have so far. And last night, we put in an application for support to do the initial review and feasibility study. And we got the report through from the CHDP just last night, which says, yep, you're successful in your initial review. We think this has potential. We can go forward to the feasibility study stage. So I can heartily recommend anybody that fancies doing some of this stuff, get yourself an idea, get yourself a wee group organised, and then go and speak to the Community Heat Development Programme. They've got good material online that will actually help you to get yourself started and get your ideas squared away. And I can't fault them for the support that they've actually offered us so far. I believe that Iona Hodge, I think, is there. Kate Hutchison is there from Reheat, which is the company that performed the initial review. They did a great job with that. I think Neil Harrison might be in the body of the Kirk as well, although I can't actually see what's going on there. So there's our CARES programme, there's our heat development programme, which are both things which are worthy of support. If you'd step on a wee bit. Key takeaways from this. Now, just before we go into this bit, just one thing I wanted to add that I put into the presentation, but I hadn't actually added it to the one that I'd sent down to get exposed. For Warmley, one of the things that we're looking at, which we consider to be really, really important, is there's the district heating system, but there is also the improvements to building fabric, and there is improvements to people's operational knowledge for the heating systems that they've got at the moment. We're trying to get set up to actually provide more of the latter, while the former is going on, because we understand that it'll be years before we actually get a district heating system functional. There is an awful lot that needs to be done to deal with people's energy poverty situation as we stand right now. So there we go, a bit of a whistle-stop tour through the Ignis and the Warmley things. I thought it'd be wise to actually bring a couple of key takeaways to the party. One, beware of unproven technology, but two, embrace new technology. Seems a bit sort of counterintuitive, but at the end of the day, you're not going to get very far without actually we're not going to get very far without actually stepping into the unknown a little bit. As long as we don't step into the unknown with blind faith, I think is the big message that's to be gone. Another one here, manage community expectations carefully, and also manage the media presence very, very carefully to avoid getting into this sort of horrible situation where everybody found themselves. You know, one way or the other, as far as the project, the Ignis project or the CHAPS project starting off and going, I probably wouldn't have done anything any differently from what the project team did. They had to carry on because they'd invested the money in it until it was proven beyond all reasonable doubt that it wasn't going to work. What else were they supposed to do? So very carefully manage your expectations and your media presence, and also make sure that you get the community buy-in at an early stage to make sure that you're going to be sustained right the way through. Bear in mind the fact that district heat is simple and cheap and popular, but anything you want to do with steam adds a degree of complexity and expense, although it may be that having a distillery on your doorstep is the perfect excuse to actually get the system started up, and it may actually give a big fillip to your business case when you're in the early stages. Bear in mind the fact that if you start getting involved in serving healthcare facilities, you're going to have multiple redundancy in place, because you can't afford to have the hospital turning cold any more than you can afford to have your customers turning cold for any length of time. One of the things we've been thinking about is that it's not just about having one big biomass boiler in the current environment where we're trying to drive that to net zero as far as possible. We're thinking a network. We're thinking possibly ground source heat pumps coupled up to one or maybe more small scale biomass boilers for boost, using existing sort of facilities. It's all up in the air. When we get to the feasibility study stage, I'm sure that Reheat and the CHDP people are going to actually sort of help us in both the technicalities and in the business cases as we go along. And the last of the takeaways is in yellow there, I would say, is engage with, for example, CARES and the Community Heat Development Programme at a very early stage, so that you're not going to actually sort of go firing off too far in one direction and have to sort of retrace your steps. There we go. that's a sort of whistle-stop tour through the Ignis and the Wormley things.